Yo, Chris, what's up, man? Can you hear me okay, bro?
Gotcha. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, man. Here, make sure I'm the speaker or the co-host, right? Yeah,
Should have sent one over to you. Let me know.
Make sure you mute the Emblem Vault host on your phone. Make sure your host on their phone is muted. Yep. All right, he's getting it going, baby, getting it going.
All right.
So it just kept crashing on you?
Yeah, it kept on crashing. It was pretty rough.
All
Is there an echo for you?
I see the it's not muted on your phone. You got to mute your phone. If you're running the space on your phone, right? Yeah, you have to mute it on your phone. Yeah. You got it, dude. We'll figure it out, bro. Don't worry. Are you running it on? You're running the spaces on your phone, right? Or yeah. Your mic's muted, dude.
Cool. Is that any better?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So tell us the situation. Chris is like playing around in the background, dude. What are you doing over there? I see him freaking out, and I'm like,
it was rough. It was rough. But so what happened was, I went to start it on my phone. It failed, and you can tell when it fails. It just keeps spinning.
Yep.
And usually that just ends the entire space, and you'll have to reboot it from start. So I tried to reboot it from start, but it still wasn't working. And then it let me go on desktop and revive the original link, which it never does. But it worked this time. So we're running it from laptop. It actually feels more comfortable this way. So
wait, you're actually running the space from the laptop?
Yeah, exactly.
How are you doing that, dude? So you figured out the magic sauce, bro? How does that? I'm surprised it's working for you, bro. That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's working. I muted the tab so that you don't have the push through for the echo. And it seems like we're running it live. Yeah.
Oh wow, dude! Congrats, man. That's a first in vault history, bro.
Yeah. So looking decent on that.
So like Jake and I, when I tease Jake all the time because it's like when you run these spaces on your phone, but you're pushing the audio out through a different channel, right? So we're pushing it out through my mic right now. But Jake will run the space through his phone, but you can't fully mute the phone. So the phone is like putting out this like low volume, which of course gets picked up by the mics. And so Jake always has to run into the other room and like drop his phone in his bathroom or whatever. So it's
exactly.
You got it working on your computer is
yeah. So I think that we could lock in on this pretty solid. Pumped about it. Rough morning for the technical difficulties, but I think we're ready to fire away.
All right, man. We got is it Aki on stage? Is that how you pronounce your name, man?
Yeah, it's Aki, and I'm very jealous seeing you guys on video. Like it's so high tech. I'm over there with my audio only. So good for you. We're evolving the art and science of Twitter Spaces.
Exactly, man. We try to push the envelope here on Emblem Vault, but even that Chris got it working on his computer, and it hasn't completely screwed up the audio. Because I know if I tried to run the spaces on my computer, we would be getting like the feedback would be terrible. It would not work. I guarantee you that. So that Chris figured it out ahead of time is hat tip, man. But welcome on stage, bro. Happy to have you here. Excited to talk about this. So much is being built on Bitcoin right now. It's really it almost boggles the mind when you compare it to 18 months ago, kind of pre-ordinals. That all this building is happening is just incredible. But if you want to give a little bit of your backstory so people can understand where you're coming from, and then a little bit about what you guys are building.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're kind of in an interesting point of this building on Bitcoin because we are building on Bitcoin. We're using something called DLCs, discrete log contracts, that were actually invented 6 years ago at MIT by the creator of the Lightning Network. But we're kind of using it in a little bit of a different way because this invention, the way we're doing it, we're creating a Safer Wrapped Bitcoin DLC BTC. So we use this DLC mechanism that's in Bitcoin to enable Bitcoin value to be ported over to DeFi on Ethereum and ETH L2s and other chains like Cosmos chains, Solana chains. So we're basically enabling the Bitcoin to be used, kind of what we call self-wrap, but basically like lock the Bitcoin on Bitcoin, and then it enables all the DeFi and building on other chains. So we're kind of like, we're arguably like the smallest footprint of building on Bitcoin in that, like we're kind of, our philosophy is let's lock Bitcoin on Bitcoin and then, use it wherever. But it still solves a big problem in the space around like wrap Bitcoin and centralization and stuff like that. So I guess I can just, because you mentioned a little bit backstory. So I've been a developer for almost 30 years. I'm 39, so that's aging gracefully, we can say. But I was also VC in 2011 in Boston, looking at AI, big data, distributed database stuff. And then I started an AI marketing company called Market Muse that I led for 8 years. It was content optimization through AI. And I heard about Bitcoin in 2011 and ETH in like 2016, but I just didn't dive into it then, unfortunately. But you know what? Next best time is now.
Yep.
So I came to Bitcoin and crypto full time 2021, and I learned about DLCs, and I thought, wow, there's a lot of opportunity here. This is something that really is safer than pretty much everything else out there for this particular use. And I started DLC Link with my co-founder Jesse, and then boom, 2.5 years later, we're DLC BTC and we're live, and kind of our opportunity has come because now there's a lot of hesitation around WBTC, and it's kind of proven out. So it's just nice to be here and doing this and helping kind of enrich both sides of the Bitcoin crypto kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, why don't you give us kind of the smooth brain overview of what the difference between WBTC, so Wrap BTC, and DLC BTC is, like technically what the difference is.
Yeah, we're solving one problem, which is like, so I guess I'll preface by saying WBTC is still, I think still today, even the most popular, the biggest way to use Bitcoin in DeFi on things like Aave and Compound and whatever. So it's basically still the biggest, like I call these like wrap Bitcoins are like a transport layer. Like, right. Like WBTC is the most popular way that companies, bring their Bitcoin into DeFi. But WBTC, which was created 4 years ago, has one, I call it a design flaw. It's not really like tech. I mean, it's kind of a design flaw. But basically, like 4 years ago, when the WBTC people were like getting set up, they were like, well, how do we get Bitcoin over to ETH? And they're like, oh, I know. Let's send all the Bitcoin to one centralized location with BitGo. BitGo is a great custodian, whatever. Let's just get all the Bitcoin in one place. And then basically the Bitcoin goes to their vault, and then they produce this, wrap token. And then they have a distribution system called the merchant system, which I can talk about. And then these like companies that are these distributors then get the WBTC out. And that has grown to over $10 billion in TVL. It's been wildly successful in many ways. But you still have this problem of all the Bitcoin going to one place.
So,
which
so
is
in
sort
theory,
of
like there, I mean, like the most, like if I was making it really simple, is everybody sends me Bitcoin, and then I issue a token against it, right? They've kind of distributed this maybe with first maybe a multi-sig, but now it's maybe even more complex than just a multi-sig, although we saw, I don't know, Justin Sun playing around with some Bitcoin.
Oh, it's totally a multi-sig.
It is.
That Justin Sun
still a multi-sig,
like
basically.
Allegedly controls. Yeah.
He still has one of the keys and still moved, I don't know, $200 million in Bitcoin last week or something like that. Nobody signed off on it or whatever yet. So.
Yeah, he might even have 2 of the 3 keys.
Wow.
And that's kind of where we are now. But that's right. Yeah, there's a multi-sig, and like one entity controls it essentially, and all the Bitcoin is there. And so if something happens with that Bitcoin, then WBTC might not be fully backed, and then it depegs, and then all hell breaks loose from there.
I mean, the reality is what that is at the core. It's like sending your Bitcoin to Coinbase, right? I mean, in theory, totally. they're then launching a token against it, but it's a centralized kind of system, basically.
It's off chain. I mean, you don't know for sure is the Bitcoin there, and it probably with BitGo, the bet was like it probably is there, but like, how do you really know if it's off chain, right? And for Bitcoin, that just doesn't scale. It wasn't a terrible design, but it doesn't scale. because basically what you have is you have the most decentralized digital asset in the world with Bitcoin. You send it to one place, and then on the other side you use it in decentralized ETH and Aave and stuff. Like it's just like a choke point, which never made sense to us or to anyone really. But 4 years ago, that's sort of all you had. Now you have better tech, and so now there's this whole, I would call them like challenger wrapped Bitcoins, like ourselves, TBTC, some other ones. And people are just trying to figure out like what's a better construct than that.
Gotcha. So what differentiates yours then? So yeah, give us the kind of high level, overview of what differentiates you guys from WBTC.
Yeah, so the difference is, so basically a bunch of teams have come up with different ways to bridge Bitcoin. Like what if you don't send it to one place, but you send it to like 50 places? Like let's say you have like 50 nodes and they're running, like that's how TBTC works. They have, I think, 60 nodes that hold the Bitcoin. What if you send it to 60 nodes? Then it's going to be kind of like not in one place. But then you still have the same issues. Well, you're not on Bitcoin anymore. You're on the TBTC security system, or like SBTC from Stacks or whatever. They all kind of like, they're all bridges. And so when we looked at this, we're like, well, that's not going to scale, because unless the bridge is bigger than Bitcoin or as big as Bitcoin, it's going to add some additional like security issues. And why, of course, Bitcoin is by far the most decentralized and always will be, I think. So like none of the bridges are like by definition going to be as safe. So we're like, there can only be one solution, and that's to lock the Bitcoin on Bitcoin. Like keep it on Bitcoin L1, but Bitcoin does not have smart contracts, which is true. But it does have discrete log contracts, which is this kind of niche that not a lot of people have known about. But well, Bitcoin developers knew about it because it's been around for 6 years. So people are like, oh yeah, DLCs, that thing. But like no one has really implemented DLCs. But anyway, DLCs are not a smart contract, but they're like a pseudo programmable, they're kind of like an if-then statement that you can actually do with Bitcoin L1 today. And you've been able to do it for years. That's kind of the funny part. Support for DLCs was added with Taproot 3 years ago. So for the last 3 years, you've been able to do this like very simple programmability on Bitcoin, do this mechanism. And anyway, that's what we've implemented. So what we do, or what our software does, is we make software that let financial institutions called merchants, which I can kind of get into, but let these merchants lock Bitcoin with themselves by moving their Bitcoin into this special multi-sig on Bitcoin that can only pay out to them. And so there's like just one technology there. When they deposit the Bitcoin in the DLC kind of mechanism, they quote unquote pre-sign their own wallet as the only output. So basically they deposit into a multi-sig that is guaranteed to only ever pay out to them. And then that is encoded in Bitcoin blockchain. And then that kind of locks the Bitcoin. So when they essentially put it in this locked state, then that means DLC BTC on ETH or Solana or whatever. And that solves the centralized custody, because they're not sending it to us. They're not sending it to a bridge. They're pretty much sending it to themselves.
Okay. So me as an individual, if I send in one Bitcoin and I receive one DLC Bitcoin on the other side, right? In theory, though, if I then sell that DLC Bitcoin, how is somebody else going to claim it if they bring it back to Bitcoin? If it's only to pay me back, how does that work?
That is our number one question, and the answer is you cannot mint. You cannot send Bitcoin to a DLC for that reason, because you're not a merchant. And so it's like, who are the merchants? And I'll give you an example, USDC, right? Like we presumably all use USDC. It's minted by a bunch of banks like SVB, Wells Fargo. We cannot mint USDC by sending dollars to Circle. Like the system doesn't work like that. And why is that? For security reasons. Because what do you want the merchants or SVB to do? Well, if you have USDC and you want to go back to dollars, you want to feel comfortable that they're going to redeem the USDC and give you dollars. And so if it's like anonymous, permissionless, you might not know that to happen? Like, what if I mint DLC BTC and I lose my keys and I cannot redeem? So the purpose of these merchants or these financial institutions is to do the minting and to do the redemption.
Okay.
And that's basically how we do it. So we have a series of financial institutions, same like WBTC has merchants. We have merchants, and they're the ones who mint the DLC BTC by locking Bitcoin that they hold. So like, let's say, for example, Amber Group is one of our merchants. If you onboard to Amber Group and you like have a Bitcoin account with them, you can send your Bitcoin to them and then they self-wrap it and they give you DLC BTC. Like, that can happen. Or more likely, Amber puts some amount of DLC BTC out there and you just swap it. You just either buy it or swap it on exchanges.
Gotcha. So you guys are using, so these merchants, that's for, in your system, that's kind of the, what I would call maybe the centralized point, is that those merchants, they're the ones who, in theory, I'm sure that you have some sort of mechanism set up where they can't mint more than the Bitcoin they currently hold, but maybe you want to get into that a little bit, where those kind of checks are to make sure they don't cheat the system, I guess you'd say.
Totally. Yeah, that's totally right. So our system is not decentralized. It's semi-decentralized, but it's a permissioned set of minters. Our goal as a protocol is to get the best minters possible. So usually the bigger they are, the better. Like if, Falcon X, Galaxy, kind of, these are like the people you might want to do this redemption function, because you're more likely to trust, a large bank than a small bank kind of thing, because they have more safeguards, risk managers, compliance, stuff like that. So they're kind of less likely to fail. But, we don't have one BitGo. We have, N number of BitGos. So let's say we have 50 merchants or whatever. Right now we have 4, but, we'll have 50 as we build this out, or 100. So instead of one place, you have 50 places. But that's right. The DLC mechanism actually takes care of that other problem you mentioned. Unlike like WBTC or whatever, where you can fake it, you cannot fake a DLC, because it's a multi-sig that's on Bitcoin. So you have to be a merchant, you have to have Bitcoin, you have to move the Bitcoin into a UTXO, then 6 Bitcoin block confirmations, then it shows up as like an on-chain signal. And then we have a set of relay nodes that basically just read Bitcoin blockchain and say, yep, that is funded. And then they publish what's called an attestation, and anyone can verify that because it's just an on-chain signal. So there's no chance that like that the Bitcoin doesn't exist, because it's all of that happens on-chain.
Gotcha. So the minters, is it from like a user perspective? Am I choosing a minter, or the system, like I put in a BTC and it randomly selects a minter, or the minter is kind of like a bunch of minters get a piece of that BTC that I put in? How does that work from a minting perspective?
Yeah, it works for retail like you and me. It looks exactly like USDC. We just buy it or we swap for it, and it just works, like quote unquote just works.
Right.
And we feel that like USDC, although not perfect, because there's a whole SVB thing, which you can talk about as a good example, but like it's not perfect, but because SVB could theoretically fail, of course, like anything could, but it's still more transparent than USDT, where like we just literally don't know what's behind USDT. Right. Even today, we don't know.
So in theory, like I could see all of the Bitcoin that's being that was put in to the DLC contracts or whatever. So there's full accountability, basically, is what I'm saying. Anybody can immediately see the total BTC on one side and the total DLC BTC on the other side.
Totally. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So if you go to our website, we just moved it to dlcbtc.com, and on the top right, it says launch app, and you launch it, and there's a proof of reserve tab. And that shows you like, here are the merchants, here's all the mints and burns. You have the full on-chain accountability, which is actually better than USDC, because with fiat, that's impossible. But with Bitcoin, you see exactly everything, and you can see the specific UTXOs where the Bitcoin is. So you can see all of the backing with this system.
Cool. So one question though that popped up is, I get the USDC, like why as a business, I'd want to participate in that, right? I get why these stable coins are the greatest like business on earth, right? Because you take in $1, you issue a token on the other side, you can then take that dollar and buy, U.S. treasuries to earn whatever 3%, and you earn 3. You just want to grow the pie, right? Because you're making money up on a percentage of that pie. But how with Bitcoin, from the minter's perspective, why would they want to take part in this, or why would you even want to build this? Like, where's the money for you all to be made in this kind of system?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the Bitcoin in this system doesn't do anything. It's just locked. It's just held there. It's not rehypothecated. It's not reinvested. It's not staked somewhere. It's just Bitcoin like sitting there. So kind of two answers to that. Why do the merchants like do this? Well, they take fees. So when they let's say you're like I'll give you an example, a really simple example. I use it all the time, and my team laughs at me because I repeat this example all the time. So we are Coca-Cola. We make syrup. We just make syrup. Retail cannot drink it. You cannot buy syrup from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola then sells it to these bottling companies in different geographies. They like put it in bottles. They distribute it. They sell like big pallets of Coca-Cola to Walmart, and then retail can buy it at Walmart. But then there's a whole bunch of like distribution mechanisms. You can also have Coca-Cola go into like that like machine at Burger King and whatever. Like you could be a business and like you can buy from Walmart in big like large amounts, or you can go to the bottling company and buy a bunch of it. So there's all these like sophisticated, it's basically a huge distribution system. And most people don't know that like Coca-Cola is bottled by these random bottling companies you never heard of. That's what the merchants do. So the merchants have to put up Bitcoin that is going to like incur a cost, but then and then we also take a mint and burn fee. That's how we make money. That's how WBTC makes money. We take a small, transaction on every mint and burn for providing the system. But then the merchants are resellers. So they put like a charge on top of it. So if you want to buy a big chunk of DLC BTC, you have to buy it from a merchant, and they're going to put like a charge, like an OTC fee on top of it.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. What was I thinking of? This is kind of similar. Well, it's not really similar. I was just thinking of, Liquid and like a federated system. It's not like that though. It's different than that. But it is kind of, you have these trusted third parties who are doing the minting, but with full kind of accountability, where it's transparent to anybody who wants to kind of investigate it a little bit. Where do you see a security risk within this system? Where's like the biggest one, and then one maybe people aren't thinking about, like what could be a security risk within this system?
Yeah. Well, I'll even point out the problem this solves is the custody standpoint. So our thesis is that the hardest part of Bitcoin is custody, like not your keys, not your Bitcoin. If you send, because if you can send your Bitcoin to an L2 or Babylon or something else, then yeah, you're going to get some benefits from that. It can start earning yield or whatever. But if your Bitcoin is earning a yield, it's not Bitcoin. It's something else, right?
Totally.
There's no way your Bitcoin is earning a yield, because Bitcoin doesn't earn. You can't stake Bitcoin. It's impossible. So by design. And so like your stake Bitcoin is not Bitcoin. It's some different thing, which is cool. Just like, that's usually like where the bridges and stuff, they usually don't point out like, yeah, actually you're not on Bitcoin anymore. You're on, XYZ system. So we solve the custody aspect by keeping the Bitcoin on Bitcoin, but it locks it. It's really boring. It doesn't do anything there. So then kind of it's the next layer on top of it. Like, you take the wrapped Bitcoin, you put it into stuff, maybe use the DLC BTC to secure proof of stake chains, through Eigen or Symbiotic, or like then kind of like the DeFi Legos kind of go from there. But to answer your question, the biggest risk of our system, so we have these relay nodes. So they're these, we call them attesters because they publish attestation. We have 15 of them. They're run by large node operators like Everstake, P2P, Hashkey Cloud, OKX, kind of like Coinbase will eventually run one, I'm sure. They're just kind of like node operators, and they run a Bitcoin node and an ETH node, and they each have an off-chain system called their tester, the DLC attester, that's running our software. And basically, they each have a Bitcoin private key. They cannot receive Bitcoin to it, but they publish like messages. So basically, like when the UTXO is funded on the Bitcoin side, anyone can see it, but these 15 attesters see it, and they each sign a message with their Bitcoin private key saying like, yep, I see it, it's there. And a threshold of these, so 10 out of 15 of these, gives a signal to the ETH software to mint the DLC BTC. And conversely, when the DLC BTC is burned, it comes up on ETH and they're like, yep, we see it. And they publish the message. The one security risk here, the one trust assumption is, what if the attesters collude and the 10 of them like work together and they censor the unlock? So they refuse. So the DLC BTC has been burned, but they refuse to publish the burn signal. And Amber or the merchant cannot get their Bitcoin back. And they cannot steal it because it's theft proof, but they could do like a bribe. Like they could do like basically ask, demand a bribe. Yeah, just hold it unless you pay us. So in order to do that, that's where we decentralize. We have bigger node operators that have more reputation. We're going to have a DLC token that they stake and earn fees, so they lose the fees if they collude, they get kicked off, yada yada. There's like Chainlink proof of reserve around it. So Chainlink also independently, the Chainlink distributed Oracle network is also independently verifying that the Bitcoin and ETH nodes and all that. So there's different mechanisms we wrap around it. So basically, we're really more like this Oracle network provider that does this DLC Oracle kind of decentralized or semi-decentralized network.
It's funny, almost all this stuff, as obviously with Emblem Vault, we're kind of in the same boat, and it's at the end it seems to be like a decentralized or as near to decentralized node networks almost seem to be like the base layer of all this stuff. Like it's like
pretty much
this foundational thing is like we have to have. I'm almost like somebody should let's just build a decentralized node network, issue a token for it, and then just everybody else click into that decentralized node network, because that's really almost where we all are. You said a token though. Why would you need a token? It seemed to me like that makes it more complex. Is it simply to try and get to enhance, I guess, align incentives for people to not or nodes to not act inappropriately? Is that the main idea behind it?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of parts to it, but to what you just said, yeah, like the off-chain, the thing about Bitcoin is, Bitcoin, we all feel this, like Bitcoin is the safest digital like security system developed, period, which is amazing and has a lot of strengths. But if you want to invest it or take a loan or do something, if you want to do something, if you want to put it to work somehow, you have to rely on an off-chain mechanism by definition. Like there's just nothing in Bitcoin that's like a node operator, like a smart, like these things were kept out of Bitcoin on purpose. And there are teams, building it in, and there's various approaches, and it's a lot more complicated. There's going to be new stuff. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin doesn't do these things, period, by design. Yep. So the off-chain, the Oracle networks, the Chainlinks of the world, all of that stuff end up being really important for enabling use. So I totally agree that it really does come down to like node operator decentralization, which is cool. Like we know how to do that. Everybody knows, how do you decentralize a network? Well, you do A, B, C, D, E. Like there's kind of a playbook there, and then you can see how decentralized the network is and what are the trust assumptions and do all that. But to your point, so one of the typical ways that node operators or networks are decentralized is by giving an incentive for the node operators to do what they're supposed to do, and punish them if they don't do what if they do something they're not supposed to do, right? And so that, like a classic way of doing that is just having them stake a token and then they get slashed. Our system is like, in our system, the token is not securing the Bitcoin itself. the Bitcoin is securing the Bitcoin itself, so no problem there. But the token is securing against the temptation to collude with 9 other, node operators. And so it kind of adds like some economic pain on top of so there's, first of all, like reputation loss. Like if 10 node operators were to collude, it would be, obviously it'd be, there'd be a huge loss of reputation, which would lead to loss of future business, etc. People would move off of it. The second is they would lose the token. And then the third part of the token is, or I guess the other part of the token are DeFi incentives, because there's like also a practical challenge. Like because DLC BTC does not pay yield, which maybe I should kind of talk about that for a minute here. So the fact that DLC BTC does not pay yield seems like a bad thing, but it's actually a feature. It's not a bug, because we target merchant. We're not B2C. We don't sell to retail. We don't have anything to sell to retail. We sell to businesses who become merchants. So we sell to financial institutions because they're the ones they onboard. They become merchants. They pay us fees, etc. So that's our customer base. So institutions in the US usually cannot touch tokens that pay yield, because those could be deemed securities. They can touch wrap Bitcoin. So if they're just taking their Bitcoin and they're wrapping it to we're basically a stable coin on Bitcoin. So it just tracks the Bitcoin. But if the DLC BTC doesn't generate yield, they can do that from a legal aspect because that's not a security. So we're a way for institutions who have Bitcoin to come on board as merchants, to self-wrap, lock with themselves, and then to basically bring that liquidity into DeFi, and then they can make more money in DeFi and do trading and all kinds of derivatives and all kinds of stuff they want to do on chain. So we're basically like a gateway for institutional liquidity to come into DeFi through Bitcoin.
Interesting.
So
okay, so you're really not targeting, me. You're targeting institutions that already have Bitcoin and want to be able to use that Bitcoin, but basically self-custody it, because they would then become their own merchant, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so kind of like Coca-Cola, from a sales standpoint, Coca-Cola doesn't sell to retail. Coca-Cola sells to businesses that sell to retail.
Sure.
But Coca-Cola does a lot of advertising and marketing. Like we do a lot of retail focused, things like this, where we talk about safety and bridging and custody and like all the things, your keys, your Bitcoin, like that. We talk about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But we don't like you cannot go to Coca-Cola company and buy a bottle of Coke. They don't sell it to you.
Right. So in theory, if I'm Bank of America, I'll use you guys and I'll become a minter, and then I'll be able to sell, DLC BTC to my clients on the other side, basically. And it's a way for me to basically self-custody my Bitcoin and bring it over onto ETH or wherever I want to bring it, in a more safe way than sending it to a multi-sig controlled by Justin Sun.
Totally right. That's exactly right. But there's one part missing. It's kind of cool, like for everyone here. Like, so why should we, give a hoot? Well, one reason is yield. So the DLC, like the DLC token, it's gonna have token like incentives, and basically, as I'll put it this way: as a company, we're all about finding safer yield opportunities on DLC BTC. Like we are basically building a catalog of what are all the things you can do with DLC BTC and how much yield does it pay. Kind of like with USDC, right? Like where do you, okay, cool. You got USDC, great. What do you want to do with it? Like maybe you want to invest it, or like, and how do you want to invest it? And what kind of offers are there? And like, what are all the DeFi protocols where you can use DLC BTC? So like even on our website, we have an earn page and we try to list all the things, and we're improving it a lot, but it's going to say like, here are the approximate yields you might expect from this strategy versus that strategy. And this is riskier and that's less risky. Kind of like, just promoting all the ways you can use wrap Bitcoin.
Yep. Chris, did you have some questions? I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Awesome convo so far. I was kind of curious as to, how you got started. DLCs, like you said, have been around for a number of years. This is a pretty novel approach. Did you kind of stumble across DLCs and think to kind of build this out, or what was your kind of thought process? And also maybe how many other people are kind of approaching, DLCs in kind of this type of way?
Yeah, yeah, great. I guess I'll give you both answers chronologically. So I actually got into it through a funny way, because when I was coming to the space, I was watching the MIT open courseware on Bitcoin. That actually the inventor of DLCs, Taj, he teaches that course, but I didn't know that at the time. So I was watching it. I'm like, okay, cool. This is some of like the technical stuff you can do on Bitcoin. And then I actually didn't know a whole lot about crypto building, but I started helping my friend who's a Hungarian engineer. And I'm like, oh, okay, you're in Hungary, but you're brilliant. And I'm in New York and I'm not that brilliant, but I can like meet people. Let me make some intros for you. And I made an intro to my friend, Vadim. And Vadim hired this guy to build the Chivo wallet for El Salvador. And like, whatever, a few weeks later, the guy's in El Salvador with his team. And boom, they built the Chivo wallet and launched it. And suddenly 250,000 people, daily active users were using Chivo. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So Bitcoin has crossed the chasm. Everyone in El Salvador has some Bitcoin. Whether they know what to do with it or not, that's a different thing, but they have it. Cool. So if a bunch of people in the world are just going to have some Bitcoin, what might they want to do with it? And I started thinking of like if you're like a business or something, you might want to take a loan. Like, okay, like small business loans. Okay, well, how can we take a loan on Bitcoin? Well, I don't know, but there's this thing called Aave, but it takes wrapped Bitcoin. That doesn't seem like a good idea. And then somebody told me about DLCs, and I'm like, cool. So I met the DLC teams, and there were about 7 or 8 DLC teams back in 2021. I think there's still about 7 or 8. It's just a very niche thing. Like and the way that we use DLCs ended up being completely different than how the others use it. But anyway, I met these teams and I'm like, cool, this is a really interesting technology, but like I want to use my Bitcoin in Aave. I don't want to create like a new thing, or I don't want to create a new chain or whatever. I just want to solve this one kind of very simple. In a way, it's kind of a simple problem, but I want to solve this. And then we started thinking of how could we use DLCs to do that. And basically that's when we invented self-wrapping, which is the idea of self-wrapping, locking Bitcoin with yourself. Because in the typical DLC companies, and there's about a couple of them like Atomic Finance, Shell Finance, Lava, XYZ, there's like a couple of them still. And so what they typically do is they basically have like, you have a different DLC thing where you have Alice and Bob, and both of them put up some Bitcoin. And then there's this like oracle that tells you the price. And you kind of have to like pick your oracle because it's on Bitcoin. It's kind of like this custom stuff. And we're like, So anyway, we just simplified that. We got rid of Bob. And it's like, what if Alice locks with Alice? And what if the oracle is Ethereum blockchain? And that's when we kind of came up with our design.
It's interesting. It's so much of it, is like, well, are Bitcoiners going to adopt this, right? I think in a lot of ways, and I think the Bitcoin maxis, however small they are, aren't necessarily going to adopt it. But if your strategy is, who cares about that? We're going after the institutions anyway. That could be an interesting strategy, because I mean, when I meet with, real maxis, they would tell me, the huge whales too would be like, well, I want to earn on Bitcoin, but I don't want my Bitcoin leaving Bitcoin. I want to maintain control of it. I want to do this. And I'm like, bro, what you're describing is literally impossible. I don't know what you're talking about. what you want is not possible,
Yeah.
So,
I'll put it this way, just to continue, because I'm full of Coke analogies. Coca-Cola, not cocaine. I don't have any cocaine analogies, but I definitely have Coca-Cola analogies. So like we make Coke Zero, right? It's like all the classic Coke flavor, but none of the sugar, because you don't want diabetes. Like Coca-Cola was great until people started getting diabetes and they're like, oh, that's not good. Let's make a diabetes-free Coca-Cola. Not everybody drinks Coca-Cola, and that's cool. Like that's totally fine. But for the people who do, we highly recommend Coke Zero. which I actually do drink. Like it's actually personal choice. Not a prerequisite to doing business with us, but I like Coke Zero, but totally right. And so there's different philosophies. Basically, if someone's holding Bitcoin in like cold storage or whatever, you're not earning yield, and maybe that's fine. My issue with that is if you are holding it for years, decades, generations, I like to earn like a 5% yield, because then it can compound. And then after 30 years, it's like, tripled or whatever. Like, I think that's a good strategy, but I don't just want to willy-nilly like throw it into random things. I want to do things like Aave. Like, I love Aave. I think Aave is great. Aave works. I want to use Aave personally. If people want to use Aave and have Bitcoin, or traders or whatever, whales, whatever, if they want to use Aave, that's like the venue we want to be in. But yeah, that's kind of our target audience.
So what's your strategy? Give us a little bit of behind the curtain of your kind of marketing strategy, your go-to-market on trying to attract these people, other than doing Twitter Spaces. Like, what's your, is this like just meeting at conferences and stuff like that, or what's your kind of go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, it's a lot of co-marketing. So we partner with Curve, with Aave. We haven't fully finished listing on Aave, but we're working on it. But like Curve, like right now we're working on a launch with Spectra Finance, which can do PT DLC BTC, which earns
Jesus,
a yield.
That's a lot of acronyms, man. What the hell is
I
that?
know.
What is that? What the hell is that, bro?
Oh man, yeah. So it gets wild, right? Because of the DeFi ledgers. So PT DLC BTC is going to be Spectra Finance's new thing, which earns yield on DLC BTC by having, it's a derivative that have people like speculate on the future value of DLC points. So that's going to be like a thing, right? God. That's like a product. I know. And it gets like really zany, right? But people are searching for these traders are searching for these yields, right? Or I'll give you another one. You can take an ETH loan against DLC BTC and earn the staking yield on ETH. Stake it and earn 3%. But then you could also do a leveraged recursive ETH staking, where you take additional stETH against the ETH and you loop it anywhere from 4 to 15 times, which will earn you're taking ETH stETH loans, which will earn you anywhere from 10 to 35% APY on your Bitcoin in a recursive ETH staking strategy. So like that's another thing.
Yeah, you're missing me just like shaking my head laughing in the video, because I'm just like, I'm so terrified of doing any of this stuff, man. I was like, I don't even want to stake my ETH. I'm so scared of like, I don't know, that weird attack that I've read about on Twitter a couple of times, where I'm like, I'm never staking my ETH. Even though when I got into Ethereum, I was like, dude, I got to get 32 ETH so I can stake it. Now I'm like, even if I get 32 ETH, I'm not going to stake it. I'm so freaking terrified of this stuff. But like, I know Jake would love this. Jake is like all about this. Like, how can I remodel it and restake it and stake on stake? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man.
No, it's totally, it's like think about banks, right? Like you put $1 in a bank, they'll lend it out nine times.
Sure. I get it, dude.
And the bank like lives with that. And that's very normal for a bank to leverage 9 times. But like when we are our own banks, do I want to do, like, I don't do that personally, but the traders we work with, they do. So like basically all the trading shops like FalconX, Cumberland, whatever, they have a job to take, corporations basically send them their money and they're generating yield on it. And they're professional risk managers. They look at like, what's the risk return on this strategy or that strategy or that chain or these points or whatever. And they're totally managing all of that. Yeah. So that those are our customers, basically. Any kind of trader, the traders are our customers, because they're the ones using Wrapped Bitcoin to do like trades and stuff.
Very cool. It makes total sense. My brain just keeps going, what could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? But that's what these guys do, man. It's like, they're professionals. This is what their business is, right? And
it's totally their job. And just like banks can blow up, because they're over leveraged. Like that's like when you put dollars in a bank and the bank like gives you like some savings account, whatever, like there's risk return. It's all about managing like the risk return. And honestly, that really comes down to like, how confident are you in the strategy? So like stake ETH, like I actually stake ETH because like for me, that 3%, although it's very low, but that's like, for me, I consider that safe personally. But, but then, I mean, like, that's like, I'm just an amateur at trading, right? So there's like, and usually the bigger trading houses, they're running like really large amounts of money. Like they're doing, like we were talking to one the other day, they just took a 3,000 Bitcoin loan to use in a strategy, and they're like, whatever. And like, bless these people, they know what they're doing. I've never been a trader professionally. I've been a crappy trader personally. So like, I don't know, but basically we're just like making trading ops infrastructure. We provide them. Basically what we're just saying is like, instead of Wrap Bitcoin, which has this known point of failure, use this other thing which doesn't have one point of failure. And then we're a software company. We try to bring on more merchants and more relays and whatever, testers, and we service the traders that that use this product.
Very cool. It's been great to talk to you and find out what's actually going on behind the scenes. It makes a whole lot more sense to me now, as I never really fully got the idea of even wrapped BTC for the individual. Kind of always was like, yeah, but I mean, I got it. You could go farm it or whatever, but from an institutional level, which I think is really smart way to approach it, it makes a whole lot more sense to me, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing too is like, these things are like financial infrastructure rails, like low level financial institution things, and Bitcoin and ETH and whatever become more valuable when people are building on top of it. So that's great. So even if you never use it, like I'm definitely not pitching anyone to use DLCBTC. Everyone can make their own decisions and stuff. But like for example, when I take a loan, I've taken loans in SoFi. Like I don't know how that stuff works, but when I compare SoFi to Wells Fargo, whatever, I get a better deal through SoFi. Boom, I'm going to take the loan.
Sure.
And I'm just, they've been around for a while and like, cool. And they're just, they're good at loans and I need the loan. Like at the end of the day, that's like how these things kind of play out. So in a few years, like we're at a really cool spot because we see this financial system getting built like in all the layers and good, bad, and ugly and everything. But then at the end, like we're not going to know we're using any of this. Like if you're just playing with a game, let's say you've got like a game on your phone in the future and it pays Bitcoin rewards and you're like, oh, that's a cool game. Like you're not going to know what chain it's on or whether it's using DLC, BTC, or WB. Like you're not going to care. You just want the thing to work and not break. And that's really, as a software company, our focus is just make it work and make sure it can't break.
Love that, man. And it's a great philosophy. That's our philosophy as well. What's the best way for people to contact you? Is it DM or DM the company Twitter? What's the best way for people to contact you if they're interested?
Yeah, I would say Twitter is great. DM or otherwise. We've got a Discord. Maybe Discord's actually the most interesting because it's more interactive. And the Discord link, maybe we should put at the top of the website. Come to think of it, but it's at the bottom of our website.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just 2 days ago we just hired a community manager. So
Nice.
So there's actually like a human in there now who can help and explain things. So yeah, I would say Discord is definitely the best way to reach us now.
Perfect, man. Appreciate you coming on. I learned a lot. Of course, known about DLCs for a while, but you gave me more education, so I really appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for joining in. We'll be back on Tuesday. Jan from Xverse is here. Give us an update on what's happening with Xverse. Tuesday, Amir, who was supposed to be on this week but got a little sick, he's going to be on Tuesday. And we got a bunch of other guests around that private. It's going to be a privacy-focused space, so I'm excited to dive into that, learn more about privacy. Remember, guys, we're on every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Really appreciate y'all for joining. And we'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend. Take it easy, guys.